Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. And this show is packed full of loads of amazing new things and ideas. It's been really fun to make. So firstly, in Raspberry Pi, we have the first whispers of the Raspberry Pi 500, so an all-in-one Pi 5 in a keyboard, but also the first view of the mysterious RM2 Raspberry Pi Wi-Fi chip. It's turned up on a Pimoroni board, the Pimoroni Pico Plus 2, and we'll take a quick look at that. There is not one but two projects that are looking into how you can stretch PCBs, not bend them, but actually stretch them and have them retain their functionality. And we'll also be looking at a wonderful ZX Spectrum recreation that uses an ESP32 and beautiful color-printed circuit boards. We also have a new product of the week. The M5 Stack Cardputer will be announcing the winner of the Arduino Alvik robotics competition. This is a packed show, so let's get right on with it. We are going to start this week's show by looking at two separate videos that explore the concept of stretchable PCBs. Now, one of them showed up quite recently and it reminded me of one that I saw a few years ago, both of which I think are very interesting, using, I think, slightly different methods to come across something very similar. Now, stretchable is the key word here. These are PCBs that can stretch. There are flexible PCBs already. In fact, we've seen those quite recently. We featured the FlexDuino on the show, which is a fully functional Arduino board, but it just happens to be on a flexible PCB, so it can be flexed around. And as I mentioned at the time, it's the perfect thing for wearables. But this takes things even one step further. We're going to begin at the Faboratory, which is a part of Yale University where they come up with a whole load of really exciting things. We featured the Faboratory channel on the Electromaker Show before. I can't even remember which project it was, but there's a bunch of really short, interesting work-in-progress videos of the kind of things that they are researching. And all of this is, of course, backed up with papers as well. And I'll say straight away, before we even talk about the video, if you're interested in finding out more, there is a publication link just down here on science.org that I have briefly taken a look at. But the video itself essentially shows how that you can put a special blend of metal paste on silicon or on some kind of stretchable tape that allows it to be stretched up to 4 times its size and still retain its functionality. So you're seeing an Arduino Pro Micro idea, clone, whatever, here working on this breadboard and being stretched out quite far. They also did it with an Arduino LilyPad, a Sparkfun sound sensor, and as you see later in the video, they use the Pro Mini version to actually put it on top of a soft body robot, so you have everything except the air supply for the robot on board. You could have all of the sensing for how the robot moves on the robot and just need some tubes running into it to actually get that working. So yes, here you're seeing an RGB gesture sensor that has been converted into this new flexible PCB form, and if I do skip slightly further on in the video, you can see this is one of their soft body robots which now has its own microcontroller brain on board, what I just mentioned. I just wanted you to see it in action as well. Now, it's a short video, it's only 2 minutes long, it's just giving a sort of rough idea as to what these things could be used for. I particularly like this one, the two little cubes that breathe until they get together, and then they can breathe and touch each other until they eventually have a contact that just stays like this. It's holding its contact together. It's such a lovely and different way of thinking about it, and of course they give a example of exactly how this could be used practically. This is a fully flexible flex sensor for someone's elbow with the microcontroller on the point of strain, which seems something that would have been impossible to do. Now, you could always argue you don't need to have the microcontroller on the point of strain, but they're just showing that it is possible. This is research that is ongoing, and as I said, as soon as I saw this, it just pinged a thing in my head that reminded me of something I saw some years ago, which is very, very similar to this. And that is here on CNLohr's YouTube channel. Now, we should be no stranger to CNLohr here on the Electromaker Show. I feature almost every video that he makes on the show because he's such a wonderful creator, an inventive person, one of my favorite creative coders, and someone who has, over the years, pretty much covered every level of engineering on the embedded spectrum, at least for someone with a high-level kind of noob-ish view like me. And this is a project that some of his friends are working on as part of a research team for the United Aerospace something. I'm not so up on that kind of stuff. But this is a research lab looking into something very, very similar, using PolyLMN, which is a liquid metal substrate thing that can be used very similarly to solder paste that works on these boards. And the way it works is really quite wonderful, because all you need to do is just take a solder mask, and I'll see if I can find one in action here. Yeah, you take a solder mask, put it down, and then you put the compound into an air gun and just spray it on. And then when it cures in the oven, it is just ready to go. So it's sort of like opposite solder paste in a weird way, in that you're not putting solder blobs on a board that's already been made, you're just putting those things down and making the circuit with them. Now, one of the things about this particular video is whether they're using exactly the same methods or slightly different methods to the Faboratory at Yale. This one goes into a lot more detail as to exactly why this works, how it works, and what you could do with it. It takes you through various different steps. Charles came up with a specific board designed for this test because he spent an entire day in the lab with some friends who were doing this as their research and showed various different ways you could use it. So what you're seeing here is a circuit board with different touch pads. You can touch those with your fingers, and the touch pads are pressure sensitive, which I think is quite nice as well. The more you press on them, the resistance in it changes, and so you can actually affect the light levels of different LEDs by pressing them, something that I think happened sometime earlier in this video. An interesting little bonus here, by the way, if you saw the LoRa, Charles Lohr's LoRa library that can make any normal microcontroller, well, not any, but a lot of normal microcontrollers into probably highly illegal LoRa transceivers. Even back here, he did a test where he used one of these flexible PCBs as an antenna to send FM radio to his computer to send a tone over it. And you can see on the computer the different frequencies that he's able to achieve with this. This is all just a test. This is all just stuff they were playing with to have fun with flexible PCBs in the lab one day. But it's a fascinating video. It's going back a few years. This is, 3 years ago. This was in 2020, I guess. November 19th, 2020. So yeah, it's almost 4 years ago at this point. But it's a wonderful video, and I thought it was the perfect companion to the Faboratory video. And both channels, I've said this about Charles's channel a million times before, years and years of just wonderful, inspiring, embedded and non-embedded programming and electronics on his channel, and the Faboratory as well. Always keep you up to date with various little bits and pieces that they're doing, and they're all absolutely fascinating. Now, since the Raspberry Pi 5's release, I think everybody assumed they would follow a very similar footprint to the way they released the Raspberry Pi 4. There'd be new Raspberry Pi 5 variants with different amounts of RAM, and eventually a Raspberry 5 Compute Module 5. And we now know that is going to be a thing. We've known for quite some time. Eben Upton was at a meetup of Raspberry Pi things last year in Cambridge and said, yes, the Compute Module 5 is coming, with no strings attached, no date or anything, but it will be coming. The Pi 500, however, was completely unmentioned until now. Some eagle eye at Hackaday, presumably Jenny List, who wrote this article, noticed that on the GitHub for Raspberry Pi there is a change adding the RPI 500 to one of the device tree files, which means that this is something that is definitely being worked on. Now, the Raspberry Pi 400 was a little bit divisive. It was a divisive device because many people quite rightly said, what's the point here? You have a Raspberry Pi, you plug in a mouse and a keyboard and a power supply and a display, and it works. You have your computer. The Raspberry Pi 400 simply removes the need for the keyboard. So why? What's the point? You can't. It's not small anymore. You can't leave it somewhere. It's not a headless device. And I would say yes, valid, but also you're maybe not the target for this device. Educational establishments like schools, for example, I actually know a couple of teachers who have used these in their classes and say that they're fantastic. One person in particular who is working in an educational establishment that is still using computer tech from quite a while ago, very old computers that are breaking, and they don't really have the resources to replace them, got a bunch of Raspberry Pi 400s through a something to do with charity. I don't know the ins and outs of it, and they say it's fantastic. They are stackable. You get them out, you put them down on the desk, and you can use the computer peripherals from the computers that are a bit dodgy and too old to use now to do all kinds of stuff. And you can plug into the back onto the GPIO port, so you can start teaching people about physical computing, like just turning LEDs on and off and all that kind of stuff, all from the one device. So whether you're a fan of the Pi 400 or not, the fact that the Pi 500 is coming is something that I am very pleased about, because it's going to put powerful computing in a really useful form factor into the hands of those that need it most, those who are starting their learning journey and may not have the resources to do it alone. So the Pi Pico 2 and the accompanying RP2350 chips have been out for a little while now, and there are a number of other boards that use these chips that are out there too, not least Jumperless that we've talked about last week's show and will be on this week's show, perhaps have already, depending on how I edit this. But there is no official Wi-Fi version of the Pico 2 yet. I mean, we all know it's coming. There was the Pico, then the Pico W around a year later, I believe. And there is the Pico 2, and there's going to be the Pico 2W. But what I didn't realize is that Raspberry Pi have taken matters into their own hands and created a standalone module that will be their Wi-Fi module going forward. And if you're interested in actually trying this out, there's a board available that has it right now. This is the Pimoroni Pico Plus 2W. So the Pimoroni Pico Plus 2W is available now from Pimoroni. As you can see, it is £16.80. And it is something that you can order today. It will ship today if you order it within 4 hours and 50 minutes as I am recording this clip. And the board itself is what you would expect from Pimoroni's sort of upgraded Pi Pico boards. It swaps out the connector for a USB-C connector. You get more onboard RAM and things like that. So 16 megabytes of QSPI flash, which supports XIP, which I believe stands for Execute in Place. This is definitely going on the list of deep dive things for Ian in the future. As far as I understand it now, which may be wrong, it allows you to execute code directly off the flash instead of having to pull it into the memory to execute it. Exactly how that works, I have no idea. If you're familiar with XIP, or ZIP as I assume somebody probably calls it, and want to give a quick description that someone like me may understand, please do dive into the comment section. But that's how I understand it. You also get 8 megabytes of PS RAM, and the really interesting part of it, however, is this: the Raspberry Pi RM2 module, providing 2.4 gigahertz wireless and Bluetooth connectivity. Now, under the hood, this is the same wireless chip as the original Pi Pico W, an Infineon part, the CYW43439 wireless chip. I make no apologies for not remembering that designation number. But under the hood of the module is that same part. And the module itself looks not dissimilar to an ESP32 actually when you look at it, but I'm assuming that's just because this is the most efficient way to fit a Wi-Fi module and everything it needs into one little footprint that you can just plop down onto a PCB. Because this has everything it needs inside, including the aerial. Now, the board itself also interestingly uses the RP2350B variant, which has a lot more GPIO, but I'm assuming that that's for internal reasons. Maybe that's required for that quad SPI flash module I mentioned just before, because those GPIO pins are not broken out to the user. You get the same GPIO number as you would on the Pimoroni Pico Plus 2 without Wi-Fi that I think just uses the original RP2350 chip. I stand corrected. The original Pimoroni Pi Pico 2 Plus also has the RP2350B variant. So maybe that does have something to do with Quad SPI. Once again, if this is something that you know about, please do let me know in the comment section. But yes, I can't help but think if you are looking for a RP2350 board which has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built into it already, if you're looking for one that it's easy to attach extra things to via the I2C bus, because you have that quick/stemmer connector, and if you're also looking for something with a bit more grunt, a bit more flash, a bit more RAM, this would be a really nice choice. Alternatively, if you are just wanting the basic RP2350 experience with Wi-Fi, I think it's safe to assume that when the Pi Pico 2W comes out, it will be featuring Raspberry Pi's module, and it will probably be priced in a similar way to the original Pi Pico. The Pi Pico came out and was just a few pounds, and then a year later the Pi Pico W came out, and that was only £1 or £2 more to add Wi-Fi to it. If they're going to be doing that with the Pi Pico 2 as well, that's definitely going to be a very good value way of getting a hold of a Wi-Fi RP2350 board. It all depends on your use case. But as always, Pimoroni have taken the original idea of the Raspberry Pi Pico and improved it in multiple ways, and for some people this is going to be the perfect development board to take them right through the prototyping stage of their project through to getting pretty much all bells and whistles, well, making bell sounds and whistling. It is time for our product of the week, which is the M5 Stack Cardputer. Now, there's a lot of buzz around this device, and with good reason too. It's an ESP32-based mini computer with a bunch of wonderful features. But before we get into that, it is time to announce the winner of our Arduino Alvik competition. Now, in case you missed it, the Arduino Alvik is an all-in-one robotic kit. It has wheels on the bottom for driving around. It has a bunch of sensors and things built into it. The main board of it is driven by a powerful STM32 microcontroller, but you interface with that microcontroller with the ESP32 Nano that comes with the kit that is on the top. So there's a huge range of things that you can do this, right from block-based programming through to really getting into the weeds and creating your own drivers for robotics. It's a great kit for learning pretty much every aspect of things, and especially if you're in a teaching environment, I could see an Alvik being something that you'd be interested in. And if you would like to find out more, that video is of course still live on our channel. It'll be in the description of this video. But as with all product of the weeks, we had one to give away, and it is time to announce that winner. And our winner chosen at random was Stand Back Burrito, who left a comment saying, I would use it to get my sons into robotics, #Alvik, which is something that vibes very much with me because my eldest son is just at the point where he turned to me the other day and said, Papa, I would like to make a robot dog. And it pleased me greatly. He's probably still a little bit young to get into it, but I can start making that groundwork, and the Alvik is the perfect way to get people interested in this kind of stuff. As I just mentioned, there are many routes into using it that make it easy for people who are right at the beginning of their journeys, right through to people who have been doing this for a while and want to get right into the weeds. So I think it'll be just as much fun for you as it will be for your son. So congratulations. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can get the Alvik out to you. For everyone else that entered, thank you so much. There is another opportunity, however, to win something equally cool in my opinion, and that is this week's product of the week, the M5 Stack Cardputer. So, what is the Cardputer? Well, as you can see here, it's quite a striking looking device. It really does look a little bit like those kind of cyber deck makeups that people make using Raspberry Pis, which are sort of all-in-one computers with a screen in them and a keyboard. The difference being this one is absolutely tiny, driven by an ESP32, and comes just already as an all-in-one unit with a battery and various sensors on board. The question of what you could do with this thing is kind of wild because we've already seen Linux running on the ESP32, so you could turn this into a very pared down tiny Linux machine. You could write some custom scripting to turn it into a very small note taker, or you could use it just as an ESP32 development device. In fact, there's already a plethora of really interesting stuff that's been done with it. But anyway, you don't have to take that from me. You can listen to our in-house engineer and gadget guru, Robin Mitchell, and he will take you through everything you need to know about it. So, as always, Robin's informative and funny video will tell you what you need to know. I've already given you a small opinion on kind of some of the things you could do with it. Just from a kind of vibes perspective, I really love that companies are putting out interesting and unusual development boards. Because this isn't the first time we've seen an ESP32 used in this kind of context. And in fact, if you think slightly bigger, but with a slightly smaller idea of what you might do with it, the Zero Writer Ink we talked about recently is of a similar vibe. It's much larger, it has an e-ink screen, it has a proper mechanical keyboard because it's designed for typing. But this essentially is a similar thing, but pushed in a different direction. And one of the things that sets this aside is its price. If you want to buy one of these kits, it's only $30. Although remember, we will be giving one away in this episode as well. And for that $30, you get a really functional and well thought out kit, or at least it seems that way. Because you get the M5 stamp that's built into it. That's a separate development module that M5 Stack made that houses the ESP32 S3. That can be a standalone development platform anyway. But you also get the bright OLED screen, you get the keyboard, you get a built-in microphone, you also get a built-in infrared sensor. There's several things that really please me about this, and not least the fact that you get a built-in battery. I know that sounds small, but the amount of amazing development kits that are this big, but you have to then spin up your own power requirements, meaning it's either tethered to a computer, or you have to put your own lithium battery on it, maybe your own battery management circuit and put it in a case, or attach it to a power bank, so suddenly your project is this big. That gets rid of that. The magnetic base is nice. It can attach to anything metal, like your fridge, or presumably a DIN rail. I wouldn't necessarily trust that in a harsh environment. And Lego compatibility is always nice. Anything that is Lego compatible means that you can just add a little bit of spice and interest to whatever your kids are playing with when it comes to Lego. And we've seen that Lego integrates so well into Maker stuff. I mean, at the very extremes, there's pieces of Lego bricks that have RP2040s in them playing Doom. But yeah, people have hacked Lego in a variety of lovely ways. In terms of programming, you can program the Cardputer using the Arduino IDE or UI Flow, which is M5 Stack's in-browser IDE for working both in block-based code and I believe MicroPython. I'm not as familiar with UI Flow, and it's something that I want to have a fiddle with. I have an M5 development board here somewhere. I forget which one, but I'll have to have a fiddle with that at some point. But yes, I could waffle about this all day, but I would prefer that you went over and watched Robin's wonderful video. And if you would like to win one of these, you need to head to this video, head down to the comment section, and you will see the pinned comment tells you exactly what to do. Tell us what you'd make with the kit and leave the hashtag M5Stack. And the winner will be selected on the 22nd of October 2024, so you have plenty of time to enter this contest. But yes, we are all very, very excited to see the ideas that people come up with for how they could actually use this particular kit. It's one of the more exciting ones. I haven't spoken to anyone who knows about this kit who doesn't have something really fun to say about it. And I'd be really interested to see in the fullness of time exactly how much comes out of it, because as I may well have mentioned in the introduction to this, the ESP32, especially the S3 variant, which is the more powerful one, is capable of quite a lot. You can run a basic version of Linux on it, but you can do things like Edge AI on it. You could completely skip the Arduino IDE and UI flow stuff and just go straight to the bare metal. I mean, you'd probably use the ESP IDF or maybe Platform IO to just completely reform how this thing works and make it your own tiny little personal hacking device. There's a lot you could do with it. But I'm interested to hear what you would do with it. Head to this video, leave a comment, hashtag M5Stack, and tell us what you would make. It is time for a very quick funding website things, and we find ourselves back on CrowdSupply, which is essentially like Kickstarter, but just for awesome electronic devices. And behind the scenes, CrowdSupply are good people. As you probably know if you've been following the channel for a while, we actually went to Teardown in Portland, which was their big hackathon meetup with lots of interesting talks, and it was absolutely fantastic. And it was there that I met in person Kevin Cappuccio, who is the person who we spoke to on the last show about Jumperless version 5. Or was it the show before? I can't quite remember. So before we look at something completely new, I wanted to give you just a quick update on Jumperless. Kevin wanted to get $15,000 for the first run of the new Jumperless version 5, and yeah, he's done remarkably well. Congratulations, Kevin. It's absolutely deserved. If you'd like to find out more about Jumperless version 5 or hear from Kevin himself about it, I interviewed him for the Electromaker Show recently. I'll leave a link to that in the description, along with a link to the page too, so you can find out anything you would like to know about Jumperless. If I had to put it in a sentence, it is a breadboard that does not require any jumpers, that does a lot more than a breadboard would by itself, and a lot more stuff than you would even think it could do, and is cool. Oh god, I feel like that terrible description just undid all of your good work, Kevin. I hope this number can't come down because of me. But what we're going to focus on here is the ESP32 Rainbow, and I think for many people watching this video, this will hit them hard in the nostalgia, because I know many of our viewers have fond memories of the ZX Spectrum. There was one around when I was quite a small person. I remember it visually being there and playing with it, but I wasn't old enough really to do too much with it. There were later computers that were also retro computers that were the beginnings of me doing what I do now. But this is astonishing for one reason. What you're looking at here is a populated PCB. These keys are all touchpads, and this coloration on it all comes from the PCB manufacturing. This is a way of making PCBs really quite beautiful. But the functionality is there too. This is a fully fledged ZX Spectrum emulator, which adds a few things to it as well, not least things like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth thanks to the ESP32, an SD card reader, ways of expanding it using I2C, and this is all from Atomic 14, a YouTuber that we know about here on the Electromaker Show because we've featured his videos before. Recently he has been working, well I say recently, it's probably almost a year now. Yeah, okay, recently working on ESP32 TV, various versions of it, which essentially is getting an ESP32 to stream video directly from an SD card to a screen. And one of the other things as well that I found out, which I thought was longer ago than this, but this is using the ESP32 DAC to create PDM audio. How good quality can you make that audio output, which is of course exciting for someone like me who is very obsessed with the idea of making microcontrollers make sound. But back to the Rainbow. This is a pre-launch project on CrowdSupply. As you can see, it is launching soon. There is no cost attached to it as yet, but this is one of the projects that he worked on his YouTube channel, and presumably ended up with far too many comments saying, I would buy one of these, where can I buy one of these, take my money now, which I think is actually kind of where this video begins. But if you want to find out more about it, I can absolutely recommend the really good walkthrough that he has created, which is on the CrowdSupply page. I will just link the CrowdSupply page for this, I think, because if you want to find his channel, you can click on the title of this video, which will take you out to YouTube, and then of course you can click on his username if you want to see everything else on his channel, or if you're just interested specifically on an ESP32 rendition of the ZX Spectrum, you can watch the video embedded in the page too, along with a bunch of extra information about it. Although, as always, what with this being a pre-launch project on CrowdSupply, I think I will leave that there for now. You can take a look at it and decide how excited you want to be about it. In my case, it's very. And we will come back to it when it launches to find out a price and to find out how soon you can get one of these into your own hands if you would like one of your own to play with. I would like to stress, though, this is wonderful, this is nostalgic, but it is absolutely legitimate. It breaks out enough to make this a development platform all in of itself, and depending on how responsive it is, this might be not dissimilar to the kind of thing that we've been talking about recently in terms of fully integrated ESP32 powered computers that are smaller than laptops, but that have a great amount of utility. Only time will tell. Now, Stephen Hawes has been making fantastic YouTube videos for a very long time about his quest to make an affordable open source pick and place machine for PCB manufacturer at home or for small businesses, however you want to scale it. Now, I've been a fan of his YouTube channel for quite a while. It is a goldmine for people who are interested in PCB manufacture. And in fact, a couple of years ago at I think it was Electronica in Munich, it may have been Embedded World in Nuremberg, we ran into Stephen, and I say we, unfortunately I did not. It was one of the few times that I was not with Rich, who films all of the stuff we do at conferences. I wasn't with him, and he ran into Stephen, who gave an introduction to Lumen. He had the Lumen there with him. He was there on the floor. So if you want a brief introduction, that interview is a great place to start. But yeah, I've been a fan of his YouTube channel for a long time, and while I was collecting some B-roll for this show, I just set my screen recorder going while I was watching his latest video. So before we go into it, I just want to give you my kind of raw reaction to one part of that video.
And with the board power too, like I want to see them light up as it places them. These parts coming up, lighting up as they get placed onto the board.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's so cool. Dude.
I mean,
Steven.
That's just the sickest thing you've ever seen.
Yes.
Like,
So needless to say, I was rather excited by that one clip of this video that I just showed you. And as the title suggests, this is replacing the need for solder paste in PCB prototyping. Now, this is a very early stage video where he goes through several ways you could try to do it, the good things about it and the bad things about it. And as always, I would much prefer you get the full story from Stephen himself. He has a fantastic YouTube channel, as I have previously mentioned. And if you're interested at all in PCB manufacture, you will learn a lot from Stephen. But yeah, that one particular part of the video was him using one of the methods here to put into his pick and place machine. And because there's no solder paste, because it doesn't need cooking after the fact, then you can have the board powered while the parts are placed. And that was my reaction to seeing an LED placed on a powered board and immediately lighting up. I appreciate maybe some people won't find that as exciting as I did, but you could hear my genuine happiness and me clapping in these gloves, which probably sounded very weird. And I don't think there's all that much more to say other than do go and watch this video. At the end, you will realize why it's exciting, because not only is this looking into how you can do it, the next video is going to be him trying to come up with his own mixture for doing this, so bringing the manufacturing costs down even more. And I cannot help but think that a completely heat-free way of working with PCBs just for the prototyping stage would be a wonderful thing. Now, one thing that he does go into in the video is all of the methods that he tries are imperfect in one way or another. Even the best version of this is something that will work but might not be hardy enough to be used in any context. You could easily knock components off it. But I still think, especially for people who are maybe learning PCB for the first time, maybe you have taken something from a breadboard and put it onto proto board and are now just coming up with your first designs for PCBs, but you don't have a reflow oven or you don't really know how to use solder paste. This is going to be a fantastic stopgap for getting people into custom PCB designs, and it's certainly something that I'm excited to try when it comes to the first line of the the PCBs for the audio stuff that I have been quietly working on in the background. Because, oh yes, I have finally found a little bit of time for some personal projects, and I will say nothing much for now, but there will be an Electromaker project about my audio stuff coming up relatively soon. TM, maybe. Conditions may apply. The link to Stephen's video will of course be in the description of this video, and I'll also leave a link directly to the Lumen Pnp page. Opulo is a open hardware company that creates the Lumen Pnp, and as you can see, version 4 is $1,995, which if you've shipped for pick and place machines before, you will realize is incredibly cheap. This is something Stephen has been iterating over for years, and I'm just a massive fan of his approach and the project itself. It's very inspiring to someone like me who wants to teach themselves to do things, and just seeing someone that has put this much time and effort into something and come up with something so wonderful really does please me. So yes, I'll leave a link to both of those things in the description, and what a wonderful idea. To close out this week's show, I want to give a few comments on probably one of the bigger stories we've had in the sort of maker embedded sphere recently. Jeff Geerling discovered that Elecrow had cloned his voice using AI to use in some of their tutorial videos on their YouTube channel. And I'm assuming most people watching this will have heard about it because this story went beyond our normal sphere, because this is a very prescient issue. The way AI is being used is unregulated currently, and people are getting away with a lot of pretty terrible things. Now, in terms of exactly what happened, well, I've explained it in a sentence, but as always, Jeff covers it wonderfully. And the main reason I wanted to talk about it wasn't because I wanted to tell you what happened. I just did. His voice got cloned. The way it was handled by all parties was interesting and really restored my faith in humanity to an extent. By the largest margin, the way Jeff has handled this is seemingly wonderful. Very calmly, very openly, he's documented all of this across 2 videos on his channel, and he has such a wonderful and balanced view about it, and just seems like a genuinely lovely person. And the other side of it is, from Jeff's side as well, is he realized this was going to get quite a lot of attention because of the nature of it, and has turned this into a fundraiser. As some of you may or may not know, Jeff had an ostomy some time ago, and it's pretty much what saved his life and allows him to live a normal life right now. If you want to know anything more about what that means, what the medical procedure is, and what it means for people that aren't able to afford that medical procedure, once again, please head to Jeff's video. There is a fundraiser right here on the side. So far, he has raised $20,000 to the United Ostomy Association of America, and I'm hoping that number will continue to rise. The other thing I wanted to touch on that's mostly good, and I'll tell you why I only think it's mostly good in a moment, is the way Elecrow responded to this. Because Elecrow are not an AI company, but for the purposes of this, they kind of are. They used AI as part of their process in a way that will give them some kind of a profit. Even though they make a lot of maker and hobbyist stuff, they're still just a company. And there's a lot of companies incorporating AI into their business, whether it's the center of their business, they are an AI company, or they're using AI tools, and there aren't many ethics attached to it as yet, because there's not really any legal precedence. And until somebody creates that legal precedence with probably a long and costly court battle, there's not going to be any of that. And there's a lot of companies worldwide that know this and are really pushing the boundaries of what is ethically acceptable with AI. I don't think that's too much of a controversial statement to say. Now, Elecrow responded surprisingly well. The CEO, I think it was, of Elecrow got back to Jeff and basically said, we are very sorry, we're going to take this down, we're going to take steps to make sure this kind of stuff does not happen in the future. It was mostly a good response. The only part of it that I don't find okay at all is just, you're seeing it on the screen right here. Through investigation, we found that the video was made by one of our staff, called, and then names the member of staff. When a CEO names a lower down member of staff to say it was their fault, that always comes across as a little bit skeezy to me, because I'm not saying that there aren't times when there isn't a single person in your company that causes a massive problem, but to actually just name and shame that one person from a position of power, to me, comes across as a little bit grim. But that's just my opinion. Feel free to tell me in the comments if you disagree with it. But the main thing I want you to take away from this is that in this day and age when everyone seems to be arguing about absolutely everything else, this is a really grown-up way of doing this. This is a really grown-up way of dealing with these problems. Whether it would have worked this way if Jeff Geerling wasn't one of the biggest YouTubers in our little sphere, it's hard to say, right? But it's still very nice to see. But the final word on this is that if you take anything from this, it's that you can take something like this and turn it into something very, very good with just a little bit of thought and a little bit of care, which Jeff has done. So the very last thing I would like to invite you to do on this show is to go and watch Jeff's video and consider subscribing, donating to his fundraiser, because he is taking something that could have been quite nasty and turning it into something really quite beautiful. That has been the Electromaker Show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your continued support, whether it's liking this video and all of the YouTube stuff or heading to the Electromaker shop to buy things. And I hope you enjoyed watching this show as much as I enjoyed making it. I've said many times before, I'm no engineer, I'm just an enthusiastic person in an attic, and I generally go on vibes for what I think might be entertaining for people to see, or things that I think you should draw attention to so you can go and find out yourself. If I've got that right, please do let me know in the comments. That really means that I know I'm doing the right thing. If there's anything that you would like to see changed, or any subjects I don't cover so often, I don't cover 3D printing very often, for an example, do let me know in the comment section, and I'll be happy to start including more of that in, because I see most things. I spend a lot of time researching this show, and then pare it down to just things that I think might be interesting. And of course, the order of that can change. Anyway, it's quite a long outro, isn't it? I hope you're having a safe, fun, and creative week, and I will chat to you soon.